And God spoke all these words, saying, "You shall not lie." The word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God. Started almost 80 years ago now on the radio in 1940. It quickly became the #1 audience participation show in the country. The next year, it was among a handful of programs that aired on the very first day of commercial television broadcasting in America, a little station up in New York City. And that program, designed by Ralph Edwards, went on to inspire countless others over the years afterwards. It was a really simple premise. Edwards asked contestants humorous questions, and if they missed the answer, they had to perform unusual and elaborate and outlandish stunts. Edwards went on to create other programs as well, but his signature show was always this undoubtedly truth or consequences. It lasted in one form or other. Bob Barker started hosting it for 36 years until 1977, in fact, and it was so popular that one little town in New Mexico named Hot Springs actually changed the name of their town to Truth or Consequences. But if Edwards had designed that show today, I wonder if he might have called it Truth or Tweet. For in this age of hype and hubris, truth has clearly become a bit of an endangered commodity, even in the church. I think of a pastor who came upon a group of about a dozen boys, all of them between 10 and 12 years old, who had surrounded a dog. Concerned that the boys might hurt the dog, he went over and he said, "What are you doing?" One of the boys said, "This dog is an old neighborhood stray. We all want him, but only one of us can take him home. So we decided that whichever one of us can tell the biggest lie gets to keep this dog." The preacher was aghast. He said, "You boys shouldn't be having a contest telling lies." And then he launched into a 10-minute sermon against lying, beginning with, "Don't you boys know it's a sin to lie?" and ending with, "When I was your age, I never told a lie." Dead silence for a moment. And just as the parson was beginning to think he'd gotten through to them, the smallest boy gave a deep sigh, and he said, "All right, give him the dog." Yeah. Asked around this morning, the common consensus would probably be this one. When it comes to telling lies, at least insofar as those little white lies are concerned, maybe even a few gray ones, sooner or later, everybody does it, right? It's indeed a little hard to get through life and not be put into a compromising or uncomfortable position when it comes to speaking absolute truth to somebody else. The phone rings. We don't want to talk to whoever's on the other end of the line, so we whisper to our children, "Tell them I'm not home right now." Or a friend comes in with a brand new but rather unflattering outfit, or with a truly horrid haircut, and they say, obviously proud of it, they ask us, "What do you think?" And what we're thinking is, "That's gosh awful." But what we say is that you look great. One research poll has found, in fact, 90% of Americans, 90% of adults tell lies. And it comes down into four principal matters. One is our whereabouts. 35% have lied about where we've been. Our preferences. We tell others we're okay with something when we're not. Our income, 22% lie about how much money that they make. And our age. Sometimes when someone tells you how old they are, it's sort of like buying a used car. You know the odometer has been set back. You're just not sure how much. So all around us, there are folks who are twisting the truth. And sometimes those folks are you and me. Now we have our excuses. Some may tell you everybody lies, but it doesn't really matter because nobody's listening. Others think that some truths are simply too dangerous or too hurtful to share with others, maybe national secrets. You remember the famous line of Jack Nicholson to Tom Cruise in the military courtroom drama several years back of A Few Good Men about the prison in Cuba. Cruise tells Nicholson he wants the whole truth about what happens at Gitmo. Nicholson yells back at him from the witness stand, "You can't handle the truth." And it may be so for some of us. We don't seem to be able to handle the truth. If we don't even want to tell the truth about what not telling the truth is anymore. We don't call it lying now. It's just spin, right? Do you see, no matter what we call it, whether we think of our prevarications as simply damage control or harmless little fibs designed to protect the feelings of other people, the real truth is, a lot of us have learned over the course of our lives to lie. Maybe a little, maybe a lot. But when we do so, we should know that we're not only breaking faith with those to whom we are speaking, we are breaking a spiritual commitment, a connection that exists between the Lord Almighty himself and you and me. See, the first thing that we ought to realize about this ninth commandment, it doesn't have to just do with giving false testimony in court, committing legal act of perjury. Nor is this word in Exodus 20:16 merely concerned with those who may tell an untruth to somebody else in order to deceive them and to actually hurt them by committing perjury, slander. There is that connotation to the words used in this passage. In the ancient Torah, the Hebrew term means witness or testimony. It shows up later in places, Deuteronomy 19, for instance, where we can read that a criminal accusation against a man must be established by the testimony or the witness of at least 2 or 3 individuals. Likewise, in the New Testament, we hear the echoes of this in Matthew 26, where we're told that with respect to Jesus himself, the chief priest and the whole Sanhedrin were looking for false evidence to use against Jesus. They went so far as to try to find false witnesses to come forward and testify. But the real word with which we ought to be concerned this morning is not the verb that refers to being a witness, or the noun which refers to, in fact, being a witness, bearing witness, being witness. It is the adjective and the adverb which has been used with them. The Hebrew word shekar clearly refers to a lie, a falsehood, a deception, or even a disappointment of some kind. It's not simply false oaths that deprive a person of their life or their rights, which are prohibited here. It is all forms of tale-bearing, false reporting, truth suppressing. Any utterance by speech or by act of that which is false, which intends to mislead or to delude somebody else. It's thus any way in which you and I may manage to deny or alter the truth in word or in deed. It may be a spoken word, it may be an unspoken one that allows others to draw the wrong conclusions. It may be a life lived under false pretenses, a hypocritical life like that of the lying prophets Jeremiah spoke of. It may be a vain thing like an idol, a false system, or a deluded way of thinking. It may even simply be error when it comes to denying a cardinal truth, Jesus is Lord, as 1 John tells us. But whatever form it comes in, if falsehood is in our lives, it is wrong. Because you see, the second implication we ought to understand about this is that to whatever degree of which untruth may be a part of our lives, we need to get rid of it. Because when all is said and done, the Lord hates lying. Take that in. The Lord hates lying. Proverbs 6:16 to 19 tells us there are 6 things the Lord cannot abide, yea, 7 that are detestable to him. You say, well, can't we count? How many are there? 6 or there's 7. 7 is simply a way of amplifying 6. That's a Hebrew way of sort of magnifying all that's come before. And so what God hates, just to rattle it off, haughty eyes, a lying tongue, hands that shed innocent blood, a heart that devises wicked schemes, feet that are quick to rush into evil, a false witness who pours out lies, and a man who stirs up dissension among brothers. It's a lot, isn't it? Easy to get caught up in. You think, well, that's just in the Old Testament. Fortunately, God is more liberal in the New Testament. Think again. St. Paul repeats this same idea in 1 Timothy 1. He notes that among those for whom the law itself has been made are the lawbreakers and rebels, the ungodly, the sinful, the unholy, the irreligious. And then it's about just a little further, for those who kill their parents or someone else, for adulterers, for slave traders, and for liars and perjurers, and whatever else is contrary to the sound doctrine that conforms to the gospel. Liars and perjurers. Look at the company we're keeping when we fall into that behavior. So why is God so agitated by this particular sin? Well, in part it is because lying is not only a form of deceiving others, it's a form of deceiving ourselves too. It destroys the integrity of the one who does it. And ever protective of our good, God does not wish that to allow anything in our lives that can damage them. And how does that happen? Because those who lie enough can begin to lose their ability to distinguish between their own lies and the truth after a while. Self-deception becomes the way in which we justify false beliefs to ourselves. Thomas Agilovich, in his book, How We Know What Isn't So, notes that 94% of college professors think they are better at their job than their colleagues. 94%. 25% of college students believe that they are in the top 1% in terms of their ability to get along with other people. Only 2% think they are below average. 70% think they're above average in leadership abilities. In the same vein, Journal of the Medical Group has reported that 85% of medical students think it's improper for politicians to accept gifts from lobbyists, but only 46% think it's improper for physicians to accept gifts from drug companies. Self-deception allows us to buy into what have been called the three major lies in this country. I'm entitled to one mistake. It will never happen to me. I got plenty of time. Lying not only destroys our integrity, it destroys our judgment. Those who lie enough can begin to believe their own lies if they're not careful. Beyond just that, however, I think the Lord hates lying because the origin of all lies and of lying itself can be traced to Satan, whom the Bible calls a liar and the father of all lies. Go back to the very beginning of this ancient book, Genesis 3, you will see that the whole debacle of human sin begins with a lie from the devil. A lie that Adam and Eve buy into and begin to perpetuate by themselves. You will not die, the serpent told them, for God knows that when you eat of the fruit from this tree, which is in the middle of the garden, then your eyes will be opened and you will be like God himself, knowing good and evil. It was a lie. Despite everything that God had done for them, what God had already told them, Adam and Eve fell for it. And they embraced it because, you see, it isn't very long until they began telling lies of their own unto God. Where are you, Adam? God says as he walks through the garden. He knows where they are geographically. He's asking for them, where are you spiritually and morally, Adam? And Adam replies, I heard you in the garden and I was afraid because I was naked, so I hid. What's the point of all of this? From the very beginning, the Lord has hated lies because at the base of every one of them, such untruths call him and his righteousness into question. Say, oh, but didn't some good people in the Bible lie from time to time? And yeah, they did. Genesis records that Abraham lied, for instance. He lied about his wife, Sarah. Told people she was his sister. Isaac, their son, followed suit. He did the same thing with his wife. Jacob lied repeatedly. He was a habitual liar. And even those Hebrew midwives, the one who tried to save the newborn child slated for murder in Egypt, Moses, they lied. Michal lied, and David, her husband, told a beautiful story in 1 Samuel 20. We should likewise note, God did not approve of any of those lies. And in fact, those who perpetuated them generally had to pay a pretty steep price for doing so. You see, if nothing else, we should be absolutely certain of one thing this morning: God sees everything. I'm reminded of a little boy, his mother told him that, making the point that even if his father and her didn't know when he was telling a lie, God knew. To which the boy quickly answered, "Yes, but will he tell?" That kid will be a lobbyist one day. But kind of misses the whole point, which is again that within the scriptures from beginning to end, the Lord hates lying. In fact, in the very last book of the Bible, we read that when the end time comes, the Lord God will throw the serpent, or Satan, into the great abyss in order to keep him from deceiving the nations anymore. So what's the alternative this morning? Well, if you're like the 90% of adults who have been struggling telling those little white lies, or maybe even some larger ones, let me remind you of an incredible offer of liberation which the Lord is making to you and me this morning. Jesus told the Jews who believed in him in John 8:32, "If you hold to my teaching, you really are my disciples. And then you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free." The truth will set you free. You know that great feeling you have when you get yourself back after having given yourself all away? That's what truth can do. It's an antiseptic. It brings healing. It brings life. It's no wonder then that within the mottos of many of the great centers of higher education in this country, Harvard and SMU, and I think UT as well, just to name a few, those very words are inscribed, though they have often been translated into more academic sounding Latin: veritas liberatat vos. The truth will set you free. Now, to be sure, if you go to SMU, the truth is not free. It will cost you. But truth itself can set you free. Because truth stands the test of time. Proverbs 12:19 says it this way: in the end, it's only the truth which can pull us out of the kinds of horrid entanglements which lying can only easily pull us into. That's why when he wished to sum up so much of what it means to follow Jesus by putting off the old way of life, by being made new in the attitude of our minds, that the Apostle Paul told the Ephesians chapter 4, each of you must put off falsehood, speak truthfully to his neighbor, for we're all members of one body. Do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouths, but only what is helpful for building others up according to their needs. See, if you're looking for a grand principle to guide your life this morning, here it is. You may not be a person of great intellect or athletic ability. You may never become a person of enormous influence, someone whose fame is known to all. But here's what you can be. Here's what you need to be if you want to follow Jesus. You should be a person of truth. Jesus once said, "He is the way, the truth, and the life." The way, the truth, and the life. So where are you this morning with regard to this 9th commandment? Been telling little white lies? Maybe even big ones? Leave the Whoppers to Burger King. Come clean this morning. Come clean this morning. When you come in a few moments and you receive sacrament, say a prayer saying, Lord, I haven't been entirely truthful, but I want to be. I want to be a person of my word. I want to be a person of your word. I want to be a person of integrity. I want to be a person whose word is in fact trustworthy. I want to be a person who can say what I say, and everyone can say, well, it doesn't make sense, but he doesn't lie. She doesn't lie. Come clean this morning, because the truth can set you free. And you can handle the truth if you want to. If the Son of God has set you free, you shall be free indeed. Amen.
Indeed,